It's 10 o'clock. 1-800-GOT-JUNK for home or office. We make junk disappear.
We do not have an exact timeline for what happens in the next 4 hours. We have something of a timeline for what happens between now and 2:15 this afternoon, where former President Donald Trump is set to be arraigned in Manhattan on charges related to alleged hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels. Let's show you what is happening at Trump Tower right now. We believe that is where Donald Trump is still waiting for his motorcade. They will make a move to Lower Manhattan. I would not imagine he wants to move with any extra time.
No, I mean, who wants to sit in the courthouse ahead of their arraignment? I'm not familiar personally with that sort of thing, but, you know, as soon as we start to see movement here, we presume the next step is that they will freeze the FDR drive, and that is when he and his Secret Service motorcade will make their way towards the courthouse in Lower Manhattan.
And there have been conversations, extensive conversations with the Trump legal team about what time he is expected to be there. He is, at this point, agreeing to turn himself in on these criminal charges. He will have to be fingerprinted. There is a certain amount of time required for the processing that any criminal defendant faces. This is a white-collar case, but there is still that process that has to happen. So he will leave Trump Tower. The motorcade, as you say, Jamie, they'll arrive at the Manhattan District Attorney's office, and we will go from there. There is a look live at the scene in Lower Manhattan. We have cameras at the start of that motorcade route and at the end, and reporters in all locations. We will get to some of them in just a moment, but let's set the stage for a day when a lot of people are going to be outside in Lower Manhattan, some of them protesting, some of them supporting, some of them going about their regular business.
And no matter what they're doing outside today, at least the weather is going to be very cooperative. We're going to see a mix of sun and clouds. Right now, we're seeing a few more clouds and sun, but it goes between the two as we go through the day. Right now, it's pretty mild. We're already up to 59 degrees, and today's high temperature is going into the upper 60s, some spots making it to 70. But we're going to be dry today, even though we see those clouds from time to time. Tomorrow, we change that. We drop our temperature by 10 degrees, and we see a few scattered showers around. Not a washed out day. Thursday, well, just ahead of a front that could bring us some thunderstorms. Look at that temperature, 75 degrees, and then we plummet down into the 40s, and we're dry into the holiday weekend.
One thing we know at this point is that the expectations that Donald Trump might have had for a large protest do not appear to be materializing. There are some protesters, some supporters gathered around Trump Tower. There are others who are gathered across the street from the courthouse. We will get to their plans in just a moment. Shannon Ferry is down there talking about what is happening in support of Donald Trump. This motorcade will go from Trump Tower down to Lower Manhattan. This is about a 4-mile route. We, as Jamie has been telling us, could see them on one of 3 routes, but you really believe, because of Secret Service protocol, that this direct route down Fifth Avenue, down Park Avenue, will not be the path that they will make their way over to the FDR.
I don't believe, but don't quote me, because I don't have the best memory when it comes to this, but I will tell you that in 15, 20 years of traffic reporting in the city, I don't believe I have ever seen a president or someone of that level with Secret Service traveling anywhere but the FDR Drive or the West Side Highway.
Yes, if they're trying to make time to get to one location or another, that is a secure location for them to get a hold of. Let's get to the beginning of that motorcade route, the place where Donald Trump spent the night, the place where Donald Trump will be leaving shortly to make his way to Lower Manhattan. New York One's Eric Feldman is there. Hi, Eric.
Hey there, Pat. As the anticipation is building about when former President Trump will be leaving here at Trump Tower to head downtown, as you and Jamie were talking about, to what we're expecting to have happen, turn himself in and be arraigned, the first former president to have that happen with criminal charges. So as the anticipation builds, we're still waiting for him. The crowd that we're seeing here, mostly media and some onlookers taking photos as they're walking on Fifth Avenue. We actually snapped a video within the last hour or so. You can see just what it looks like just south of Trump Tower, half a block south. We're a half a block north, but just south. there's a lot of media there. Not only New York, national outlets, even international outlets, all here to cover this historic day. The president has been in New York City just under 24 hours now. He landed at LaGuardia Airport yesterday afternoon, and we also have some photos of what that journey here was like for him. He was in the back of an SUV as they made their way to Manhattan, and when he got here to Trump Tower, waved to people gathered outside before he headed in, and that's when we're told that the president met with his legal team in anticipation and in preparation for what's expected to happen today, when he'll turn himself in and be arraigned after a grand jury indicted him about a week ago for reportedly falsifying business records. So let's run through what we're expecting to have happen in the next few hours. The former president is set to arrive at Manhattan Criminal Court by 1 p.m. He'll be arraigned at 2:15 before Judge Juan Merchan. The appearance is only expected to be about 15 to 30 minutes, and then the former president is expected to leave soon after, head back to Florida, and tonight he will be making an address from Mar-a-Lago. Security has, of course, been top of mind for NYPD, for Secret Service. If you're walking around this area of Fifth Avenue, even Madison Avenue, you see them everywhere. They have all the entrances where you can go towards Trump Tower blocked off. If you need to go through, you need to be escorted by someone from NYPD or Secret Service. So certainly the anticipation is building here, and the security is very tight as we're expecting some movement in the next hour or two.
And there is a live picture of the entrance on the Fifth Avenue side to Trump Tower. It's one of two entrances. There's also an entrance to the residential portion of Trump Tower on the 56th Street side. So we're kind of keeping an eye on all of it there to see where this motorcade moves to.
Are we even sure that there's not another even like secret entrance that may be assembled for this?
But as we've said, Donald Trump has expressed a desire to those on his campaign team to be visible today. He doesn't want to appear to be scared, doesn't want to appear to be worried that this indictment is ultimately going to hold him down, but he does want those opportunities for the photo of him waving to his assembled supporters. I think he's going to be disappointed by the turnout.
I think he will be as well, although he does love TV cameras. So I think he will be happy to see, at the very least, the media lined up. It's just a matter of, does anyone else walking down the street care whether or not he is seen or not?
I think the shot we just saw was the residential entrance on the other side of the building there. So that's most likely to be the place where Donald Trump emerges. We had our producers run a stopwatch on the event yesterday. There were 4 seconds where Donald Trump was visible between the door and the SUV. So if something happens there, it will happen quite quickly. But what is clear from the scene at 57th Street is that there are just not a lot of his supporters gathered for a man who 2 weeks ago on his social media post was in some ways calling people to assemble the way they did on January 6th.
But we're not seeing anyone for or against, which is so fascinating. And that just tells you, I think, some of the exhaustion and the fatigue that people feel about him.
To Lower Manhattan, New York one's Alyssa Palicelli is there outside the courtroom. Journalists will be allowed inside the courthouse to some extent, Alyssa, but there will be no video camera coverage of this moment where Donald Trump is arraigned at Manhattan Criminal Court.
Exactly, Pat. Obviously, with all the media that is camped out here for weeks now, many of them have submitted, camera and court forms, but that was denied by Supreme Court Judge Juan Merchan. But he is allowing 5 still photographers into the courtroom, at least before the arraignment proceedings begin. Those photographers will have an opportunity to take some photos of the president before the former president, before he appears before a judge. But then they will be escorted out of the courtroom back into the hallway. And in that ruling, the judge did make clear that TV crews will be limited to just the hallway only. So those still photographers will join the TV crews out in the hallway, but reporters will be allowed in the courtroom in some capacity. There's been a line all day, and they've been given slips to come back when they are allowing people in. And once that courtroom fills to capacity, the rest of the reporters will be filed into one of 2 overflow rooms. But Trump is expected to arrive here within a couple of hours. He'll be taken through a private entrance based off of some of the street closures we are seeing here. So So far, we believe it's either going to be in the side or the back of the courthouse, so not this front public entrance here on 100 Center Street, which is across from where all the media is set up and where some protesters have started to gather here. But after he is fingerprinted and a photo is taken of him, often referred to as a mugshot, he will then appear before a judge alongside his team of attorneys and the prosecutors as well. But we do expect this to start at about the 2 o'clock hour. We know that the floor the courtroom is on, as well as the courtroom itself, has been secured by court officers since yesterday, and security here around the court has been growing in the last couple of hours. We just saw a couple of NYPD barricade trucks drop off even more barricades to add to what has already been here, and we're seeing some more protesters start to trickle in the park directly across the street from the courthouse. So some street closures have been in place, and we're seeing some more NYPD presence, but a lot of court officers have been here all morning, Pat.
Okay, Alyssa, we'll come back to you. You know, there are the protesters and there are the counter-protesters. I don't know what we're calling these two sides here, but there are some people coming down there in support of Democrats, in support of what Alvin Bragg is doing with this prosecution, but there have been some of Donald Trump's supporters gathered. This is just across the street from the courthouse at this location that Marjorie Taylor Greene has suggested that Trump supporters could assemble today to express their support for the former president. Well, there you go. Every one of these moments is an interaction with the media.
Well, and isn't it just a handful of protesters versus 4 times the amount of cameras on that 1 or 2 people?
Yeah, it's so far, and we'll see if it continues that way. But if they were going to assemble, it seems like this is the moment that they would be assembling in Lower Manhattan. Back to all of that in a moment. It's 11 minutes after 10 o'clock. Here's Sally Ann with the forecast.
And we have no stress in the forecast. It is simple, it's easy, all that you want to hear about. The wet weather staying to our north, and we do have a mix of sun and clouds for today. In fact, this is a live view of our cameras in Queens, Manhattan, Staten Island, Brooklyn. We got you all covered. It's varying amounts of sunshine, and that's how the day will go, a mix of sun and clouds. We've had a few more clouds roll in now, so it feels like 53 at LaGuardia, but it's 59 is what it feels like for Central Park. Temperatures have been in the 50s, and they're headed to the upper 60s. If you're coughing, sneezing, wheezing, could be allergies. I mean, we're right up there. The pollen count is high for today and will continue high for tomorrow, but we do have some showers that will be in tomorrow's forecast that will help out a little bit. Today, our air quality is good. We're having no issues there. As I said, today overall, a nice day with temperatures getting to the upper 60s. Some spots could make it to the low 70s, and we're expecting a day that features that mix of both sun and clouds. At Breezy Point, it'll be the mid-60s or so. Then come tomorrow, we're in the upper 50s. It's a gray day, a few scattered showers, and maybe some thunderstorms moving in for Thursday as we make it to the mid-70s.
All right, coming up on 13 minutes after 10 o'clock, that means the Trump arraignment is 4 hours and 2 minutes away. He will have to make a move from Trump Tower down to Lower Manhattan shortly. We'll take a quick break and come back with more of News All Morning. Welcome back to Mornings on One on the day of the Donald Trump arraignment. That is scheduled to happen at 2:15 this afternoon. Joining me, some political and legal expertise now. Basil Smikle is a political analyst and director of the public policy program at Hunter College. Longtime criminal defense attorney Ron Kuby is back with us. Ron, in the commercial break, you kind of gave me the "don't blink or you'll miss the arraignment" speech.
Right, because I know there's the coverage is frantic right now, but nothing is really happening. At 2:15, the indictment will be unsealed if it's not unsealed shortly before that. He'll be arraigned. Conditions of his release will be set. He will be given his Parker warnings, that is, warned that if he doesn't appear for trial, the trial can proceed in his absence.
But that's a fast process.
Yeah, like from 2:15 to 2:23 is probably the time period, and that would be slow by arraignment standards. So it's going to happen very fast, and not much is actually going to happen outside of what's important is that it's happening, not how it happens or what happens.
Is anyone invited to speak at that moment?
The defendant can enter a plea of not guilty personally, or his lawyers can enter it for him. He will be asked certain questions, like, you understand if you don't appear for trial, you can be tried in absentia. Yes, I understand. But this is not a judge who is given over to spectacle, doesn't like it, doesn't tolerate it, and it should be really smooth.
Basil, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. Donald Trump has made his displeasure with Alvin Bragg's judgment clear, his displeasure with this judge clear. That it is the political side of this, that he is really trying to set the stage for his presidential campaign.
He is, and which is what makes this newsworthy, right? That there is a very fine line that he is working very difficult to blur between this legal proceeding and a presidential campaign, and how he uses this to create the platform to how he wants to run for president, narrative that gets created as a result of that. Millions of dollars have been raised on his behalf as a result of just the announcement of the indictment. I could imagine that there might be T-shirts made, that there might be some paraphernalia that's made to really galvanize the support that he has from around the country. This is rolling into how he makes his case to be president. And what's interesting is that all these other candidates that are trying to get into this race, Nikki Haley has already said that she's running. Asa Hutchinson said that he's running, and we imagine that Ron DeSantis will do the same. They're sort of in this holding pattern because no matter what they say or do, it will always be viewed as a response to what's happening on Donald Trump.
There was a newly inaugurated president in 2017 for the inauguration, who was not happy with the size of the crowd for the inauguration. He can't be happy with the number of people who have so far come out in his support.
We have barely seen anyone come out for his support in the last week and a half have we been out there now? Almost 2 weeks' time. And today especially, which would be the day because he will actually be there, we're seeing just a few people so far. He will, however, I believe, be very happy with all the cameras pointed at the courthouse.
There are a lot of cameras there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Basil and Ronald both stay with us as we continue our coverage. We'll take a short break. When we come back, what's the rest of New York thinking about the Trump court appearance? Not the people at Trump Tower, not the people in front of the courthouse. We'll go to Roger Clark in Union Square after the break. Police officers assembled earlier this morning in Lower Manhattan. One thing the NYPD never wants to do is tell you exactly how many people they have assembled for security or exactly where they are assembling, but we have seen these early indications of the police presence that is available in Lower Manhattan as Donald Trump is arraigned at 2:15 this afternoon. More coverage on that coming up, but first to Sally Ann on the Weather on the One's forecast.
Starting the day with a mix of clouds and sun. It's going to be limited on the sun dial today because it looks like a few more clouds will be rolling in the sun. Mild temperatures as our average high is 57. We're going to make it to the upper 60s for us today, but we go back to average come tomorrow. Some storms moving in by Thursday with temperatures going into the 70s. As we look at today, it's just the 70-degree mark or so. Most areas in the upper 60s. However, inland we could reach a few 70s. Here's what we're keeping an eye on, the storm system Thursday that could bring us potentially a few thunderstorms. It's a low that continues to pull out from the Denver area and bring some scattered showers ahead of it. And as the front crosses our area by Thursday afternoon, we could hear the rumble of thunder and deal with some nasty storms. But for today, we are storm-free. Sun and clouds and in the upper 60s. For Wednesday, it's back to the upper 50s. We start off with some patchy fog and maybe a little drizzle from time to time. Not a done deal. Thursday, potentially these storms, especially afternoon. High temperatures 75 degrees. And then we go into the Easter holiday weekend, and it looks like temperatures will get in through the 50s for the most part, near 60 for Easter Sunday with a good amount of sunshine and dry. That is a look at your weather on the Ones.
There's a new national poll about the Trump indictment, a national poll meaning people from the red states, people from the blue states. Overall, 60% of Americans believe Donald Trump's indictment is appropriate, although in that same sample, 3/4 of the people surveyed think, yes, some of this is political. New York tends to lean Democratic, so how are New Yorkers feeling about the Trump indictment and arraignment? Roger Clark is taking the pulse of New York from Union Square this morning. Roger, as you said, kind of halfway between the Trump Tower circus and the Lower Manhattan circus.
Yeah, Pat, I didn't do the measurement, but yeah, I'd say we're pretty much in between. And, I'm looking around here at Union Square Park, and, the cherries are blooming here. The sun is coming through the trees, and quite a lovely morning here. Folks going to work, going to school. But that being said, certainly thinking about what is happening today, uptown, downtown later on, and, a lot of emotions. Some folks are like, hey, they don't think this should be happening. They think it's a witch hunt. Some people think the former president had it coming, and this is what's going on. But also, there's concern, especially after what happened at the Capitol, what's going to happen today? Is it going to get in my way? Is it going to distract things? Is it going to mess up my commute? Got a chance to talk to some New Yorkers about what's happening today here in town.
I'm going to sleep through the whole day. I just worked all night at Bellevue Hospital. Hopefully it's not going to be a busy night for us in terms of traumas.
Not a witch hunt at all. This is long overdue, and it's just sad, that we're an embarrassment for, the countries around the world, that, we have a president that is indicted now.
Politicians get indicted for things all the time. He's already been indicted, his organization, for stuff, so nothing happened. I think it's going to be fine. We'll be fine. He will face whatever justice is due him.
Yeah, so that first woman, Pat, was a nurse at Bellevue, worked the night shift, and she's exhausted. She said, I asked her, what do you think about all this? She goes, my brain's not even working. But she's going to go to sleep, and she says when she wakes up, she hopes that everything's cool, right? And that's it. So that's, and this is the kind of now. But then we just spoke to another gentleman who actually is a supporter of Mr. Trump, and he said, oh, he's at Trump Tower? I'm going there now. So I don't know if he made it yet, but he was on his way up to Trump Tower.
You're contributing to the protests.
I wouldn't say that. I was just alerting him, I also just told someone that Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg are friends, and he didn't know that. So that's a whole nother story.
Oh, my God.
Right.
Sure.
Always a fresh perspective from Roger Clark. Roger, we'll check back with you as the morning goes on. Thank you. Up next, that pro-Trump rally is planned for near the courthouse this morning. Mayor Adams and the police commissioner got out ahead of that yesterday. They called out Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Errol Lewis joins me for the Political Buzz next. Staying with us, Sally Ann has the forecast just ahead, but first here's Anthony with today's top stories.
Pat, thanks. Good morning, everyone. It is 10:29, and here is what's happening. We want to take you live to Midtown right now, specifically just outside Trump Tower. Former President Donald Trump inside that building right now, preparing for what is a historic day in this country. Trump will become the first former president to ever face criminal charges. He will be arraigned today in a New York courtroom after a grand jury voted to indict him last week. Trump arrived here in New York yesterday in preparation for today's proceedings. A short time from now, he will head here to Lower Manhattan, where crowds of journalists and protesters have gathered. Several members of Congress have also been spotted downtown, all ahead of Trump's arraignment, which is scheduled to take place this afternoon. He's expected to face more than 30 counts related to hush money payments made to an adult film star. People here in the city are being told to expect heavy police presence in both Midtown and Lower Manhattan, along with street closures throughout the day. Turning to other news this morning, Finland has officially joined NATO. The membership more than doubles NATO's borders with Russia. It's also a blow to Russian President Vladimir Putin, who in launching the Russian invasion of Ukraine vowed to block the alliance's eastward expansion. Russia warned that it would be forced to take retaliatory measures to address what it called security threats created by Finland's membership. And President Biden is set to discuss the risks and opportunities of artificial intelligence. He's holding a meeting with his Council of Advisors on Science and Technology today. They're looking at the importance of protecting individual rights and national security amid innovation. Biden is also set to call on Congress to pass bipartisan privacy legislation to protect kids and limit the amount of personal data tech companies collect. I'm Anthony Pascal, and that's a look at some of this morning's top stories.
Temperatures will be warm today, but we've got some clouds. Here's Sally Ann with a check on the forecast.
It's sunshine, but limited for us today as we have an easterly wind. I think more clouds and sun, but at least some sun and dry. Then come tomorrow, we start off with some patchy fog and maybe some drizzle as our temperatures go back down to the average high in the upper 50s. By Thursday, storms and potentially those storms with warmer air ahead of it will interact with the cooler air behind it. And I'll show you that coming up in the 7-day forecast today. High temperatures close to 70. It is a storm system out west that we're keeping our eye on. Ahead of the storm system, you'll see that it kicks off some showers and some thunderstorms. We'll start off with some patchy fog tomorrow and maybe even a little drizzle. But by Thursday, that's when a line could form. And ahead of the front, temperatures getting into the mid-70s. And then it cools down after that. Here's a look at your 7-day forecast. Today, it's near 70. And it's a mix of sun and clouds. For Wednesday, it's gray skies and maybe some patchy fog and drizzle from time to time. Thursday, this is the storm day we're keeping our eye on. Behind the storms, it looks like we dry out, we clear out for the holiday weekend. We're in the upper 50s on Friday, mid-50s on Saturday, and close to 60 for Easter Sunday. That is a look at your weather on the ones.
As we await the arraignment of Donald Trump in Lower Manhattan, Mayor Adams has sent a warning to people he referred to yesterday as rabble-rousers. He singled out one rabble-rouser in particular, Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's just describe her as a staunch Trump defender. She promised that she would be in New York City to protest the indictment of the former president, and Mayor Adams wanted to deliver a specific message to Greene.
People like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is known to spread misinformation and hate speech, she stated she's coming to town. While you're in town, be on your best behavior.
So, I mean, that's what he said. He said best behavior. He didn't say you couldn't come to town. She immediately posted on Twitter saying the mayor was trying to intimidate her and stop her from using her First Amendment right to protest. New York One political anchor Errol Lewis is with us this morning. There are so many aspects of this that are unprecedented and over the top.
Very true. And when you have a big drama, you end up with some side dramas. And so there's the mayor, or if you want to call it a circus, this one might have 3 rings, right? So, the clowns are doing something over here and the contortionists are doing something over there.
It appears that at some point in the negotiations between the Trump lawyers and the prosecutors, there was an offer that all this could just happen by Zoom.
Yeah, that's one of the questions that when the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg is expected to hold a press conference after the indictment, after the arraignment, later this afternoon, that's got to be one of the questions that I want to hear answered, is did they, in fact, offer to just do this in Zoom quietly and avoid all of this? And I could easily believe that to be the case, because there's no particular reason that a defendant like Donald Trump has to actually show up in court. You can do a lot of the formalities, as they did during the pandemic, without requiring his physical presence. I mean, or in a much more low-key way than what we're going to see today.
From a legal perspective, we have heard speculation, and according to sources, what is in this indictment. Ultimately, though, when we get those details from Alvin Bragg's office, there will be, a national political assessment as to whether this actually rose to the level where it should be prosecuted or whether it's politically motivated.
That's exactly right. And what I am anticipating, to add my own little speculation to all of this, is that it will be a somewhat routine business records, white-collar crime that is being alleged here. And I say that because in this same courthouse, with this same district attorney, in front of the same judge, in fact, they won a 17-count criminal conviction of the Trump Organization for misstating a lot of their tax operations going back 15 years, for which their CFO, Alan Weisselberg, is sitting in Rikers Island this morning. So, at the time, Alvin Bragg, nobody paid attention to it, but he said this is a sort of a 2-chapter case. Don't jump ahead to the 2nd chapter, but, this is chapter 1. Chapter 1 is convicted on all counts, the CFO goes to jail. chapter 2 is what we're going to see today.
Okay. I do want to shift to the other story that we've been watching, which is the state budget negotiations in Albany. We got some comments from Carl Hastie yesterday, who updated on where they are at in this. What it appears from Hastie's comments is that they've managed to either come to an agreement or maybe agree to disagree on housing, but there is still an active discussion going on bail reform.
Bail is now taking up pretty much all the oxygen in the room, and everything else is second. I mean, conversations are still being had, but that's, I'd say, was bail and housing was 90%. Bail itself now maybe 90%.
That is ominous, Pat, because none of the facts have changed, none of the statistics have changed, none of the political dynamics have changed, and so what we're hearing is the announcement of a stalemate.
So where do they go from here? They've got an extender. They've at least decided that they're going to continue to talk. What window do we have into those negotiations?
Well, this is the part where somebody has to blink. This is the part where either somebody has to bring in something of some sort of outside sweetener or other incentive from outside the contours of the bail package itself, or they're going to have to grind on. Mm-hmm. And, you know, look, I'm old enough to remember, you remember the days during the Pataki administration where the budget would be, you know, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months late.
Oh, we were going forever. It was Governor Patterson who figured out how to exert a little more influence on the process.
The main factor is after a certain point, the legislators will not get paid. And that usually ratchets up the heat to the point where they can get a deal.
But this is the period of time which I think leads to some terrible and incomplete decision-making in Albany, when there's a sweetener thrown in, but nobody had a chance to really think through the details of it. I mean, you only have to look at congestion pricing. How many years ago was that thrown in at the end of a budget negotiation?
Sure. I mean, and the problem is that everything gets traded for everything else, where, you know, in exchange for, you know, some dairy subsidy upstate, we'll get some additional funding for the MTA downstate. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Errol, we are going to be seeing you for a lot of hours on television today with the Trump arraignment coverage. Glad you could come in early for us.
Absolutely. Big day.
Up next, and in the papers, capturing the moment, those 4 seconds when Donald Trump was visible outside Trump Tower yesterday. Images like this on the front page of the New York Post. We'll run through the coverage up next.